Steering the DC-3 on the ground is relatively straightforward. It steers just about like any other tailwheel airplane. It can be steered left and right by gingerly applying left brake or right brake. One thing that you don't ever want to do is you don't want to make a locked wheel turn. You always want to make a rolling turn. Problem with the locked wheel turn is that you actually twist the tire under the wheel of the airplane and put undue stresses on the landing gear. So you always make a rolling turn. And this particular DC-3 is a DC-3C in the eyes of the FAA, which means that it has our 1830-94 engines of 1,350 horsepower each for takeoff. And along with those engines, the requirement is to have a geared and servoed rudder system. In the standard DC-3, the rudder will deflect to 45 degrees each side of center. In the Dash 94 powered airplanes, the rudder is restricted to only 30 degrees of travel each side of center. The reason for this is, on takeoff, if you were to have an engine failure on one engine and you had to apply full power on the other engine and you were at a slow airspeed near minimum control airspeed, which in this airplane is, what is it? I got 77 knots. The rudder is hinged about a foot behind its leading edge. So when the rudder swings to the full 45 degree position, the leading edge of the rudder actually sticks out beyond the fin, and the rudder can be locked in what's called a rudder reversal from the airflow. Will actually lock the rudder. They found that to be true with the extra thrust that these 1,350 horsepower engines put out. So they reduced the rudder deflection to 30 degrees, and to aid in moving the rudder, they've put a servoed trim tab on it, which means that when the rudder is pushed to the left, the trim tab goes in the opposite direction, to the right, for trimming not for trimming purposes, but for power assist purposes. Same way rudder is moved to the right, the trim tab goes to the left. And that just aids it in moving. It's almost like having a power boost that's being done by air pressure. That has nothing to do with the actual manual trim adjustment. That still takes place, and the rudder trim tab still deflects left and right. The problem with the 30 degree limit is that the airplane is much more difficult to maneuver on the ground. In the DC-3 with the 45 degree traveling rudder, you can push the rudder over and give just a little bit of a blast of power, and it's almost like sailing the airplane. You can steer it in all around tight situations. With the 30 degree rudder, you need to use a lot of power and a lot of differential power in many cases, especially when you have a heavy load in the rear. And you've let the airplane come to a standstill. It takes a lot of power and a lot of differential power to make a turn from standstill. And whereas with the 45 degree rudder, you can gingerly use power and almost just maneuver the airplane right around in a tight circle. For that reason, when I taxi the DC-3, I am usually 200 or 300 or 400 feet ahead of the airplane, planning where I'm going, where I'm turning, what I'm doing, so that I can adjust my speed and plan my turns. You do that with all large airplanes, but especially true of the DC-3. Rather than stop, for instance, you can use that little bit of momentum to keep rolling, and you can retard your power and, for instance, not blast tents or other small airplanes that may be around you. Otherwise, it's straightforward. One of the quirky things about the DC-3 when we're talking about steering is on the takeoff roll and on the landing roll, especially on the landing roll. You can steer the airplane with the ailerons. The ailerons on this airplane are 25 feet long, and let's just say that we have landed and the tail has come on the ground, and for whatever reason a crosswind exists, and all of a sudden the airplane starts to head to the left. In other words, the vision out the front window is that you're now looking over here to the left. If you take the aileron control and roll it toward the direction of the turn, that puts the right hand aileron in the down position. That aileron going down into the wind actually acts like a flap and brings the airplane right back. The up aileron on the left-hand side is stalled and being blanketed by the rest of the wing, so it really isn't very effective and it doesn't do anything, which is why the down aileron will bring it back. The odd thing about it's like driving a car and you've gone off the side of the road, your reaction is immediately to turn left. Well, in this particular instance, in the DC-3, when you are going left into the ditch, you got to steer toward the ditch with the aileron or turn toward the ditch. For that reason, a lot of pilots don't like it, because the reaction, the instinct reaction, is opposite of what you are normally used to in driving a car. But it's a quirky thing and it works real well. Some pilots like it, some don't. That's really all there is to taxiing the DC-3.